Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to work through this Part 2 cue card. Describe an occasion when you were not allowed to use your mobile phone. You should say when it was, where it was, why you were not allowed to use your mobile phone, and explain how you felt about it. In this lesson, you'll hear 2 different model answers and learn some useful vocabulary. Alright, let's start with Finn's response.
One occasion when I wasn't allowed to use my mobile phone was during a New Year's family gathering at my grandmother's house last year. In my family, it's pretty common for everyone to get distracted by their phones, especially the younger cousins. So, before dinner started, my uncle jokingly announced that nobody was allowed to use their phones at the table. He even asked us to leave them in another room so we could actually spend time together. At first, I honestly didn't like the idea because I'm used to checking my phone every few minutes, even when there's nothing important. I remember feeling slightly uncomfortable and wondering if I had received any messages or notifications. A few times, I instinctively reached for my pocket before realizing my phone wasn't there. However, after a while, I started enjoying the moment. Since nobody was distracted, we ended up having genuine conversations, sharing funny stories, and laughing a lot together. My grandmother talked about old family memories, and some of my cousins shared embarrassing school stories, which made the atmosphere really lively and enjoyable. What surprised me most was how much more connected everyone felt without phones. Usually, family gatherings become quiet after some time because people start scrolling through social media. But that evening felt completely different. It reminded me that phones can sometimes stop us from fully appreciating the people around us. Overall, although I felt uncomfortable at first, I eventually appreciated the experience because it helped me spend meaningful quality time with my family.
Alright, so that was Finn's response. It's simply a personal story, told in a clear and engaging way. Now let's break down how his answer matches the cue card. Finn begins by clearly introducing the occasion and setting the scene. He says it happened during a New Year's family gathering at his grandmother's house last year. Then he explains why mobile phones weren't allowed. His uncle noticed that family members were getting distracted by their phones, so he asked everyone to leave them in another room during dinner. After that, Finn talks about his feelings. At first, he felt uncomfortable because he was used to checking his phone frequently. He even reached for his pocket, out of habit a few times. However, as the evening continued, he started enjoying the experience. Since nobody was distracted by screens, the family had genuine conversations, shared stories, and laughed together. Finally, he reflects on the experience and explains that it helped him realize how phones can sometimes prevent people from fully connecting with each other. One thing I really like about Finn's answer is that it doesn't feel mechanical or memorized. Instead of answering the bullet points one by one, he turns the cue card into a smooth, natural story, which makes the response much more engaging to listen to. Alright, now let's move on to Blondie's response, which gives us a completely different scenario.
Oh, I remember this really well. A few months ago, my friends and I went to watch a very popular stand-up comedian performing at a theatre downtown. I'd been excited about it for weeks because I love comedy shows, and I'm also the kind of person who likes taking photos and recording short clips to post later. However, when we arrived at the venue, the staff told us it was a strictly device-free event. They asked everyone to place their phones inside these special locking pouches before entering the theatre. We could keep the pouch with us, but we wouldn't be able to open it until the show ended. Apparently, the comedian didn't want people recording his new material and uploading it online. To be honest, I felt a bit uncomfortable at first. I'm so used to checking my phone constantly that not having access to it felt strange. I even caught myself reaching into my pocket a few times out of habit. I was also slightly disappointed because my friends and I couldn't take pictures together before the show started. But once the performance began, I completely forgot about my phone. Since nobody was filming or scrolling through social media, everyone was fully present and focused on the show, and the atmosphere felt much more energetic and engaging. People were laughing non-stop, and it honestly felt nice to enjoy the moment without distractions. Looking back, I think it was actually a really good experience because it made me realise how dependent I've become on my phone in daily life. Although I disliked the rule at first, by the end of the night, I actually appreciated it.
Okay, so Blondie's answer feels much more modern and energetic. Instead of a family gathering, she talks about attending a device-free comedy show, which is a really creative and memorable idea for this topic. Let's break it down. Blondie starts by introducing the event clearly. She explains that she went to see a popular stand-up comedian with her friends a few months ago. Then she explains the phone restriction. Audience members had to lock their phones inside special pouches because the comedian didn't want people recording and leaking his unreleased jokes online. Next, she describes her emotional reaction. Initially, she felt uncomfortable because she constantly checks her phone and enjoys taking photos and videos. However, once the performance started, she became completely engaged in the experience. Since nobody was distracted by screens, the atmosphere felt more energetic, immersive, and enjoyable. Finally, she reflects on the experience and says it made her realise how dependent she's become on her phone in everyday life. Now let's move on to some really useful vocabulary from these two answers. And remember, in IELTS speaking, vocabulary isn't about using difficult words randomly. What examiners really want is natural, topic-specific language used correctly and confidently. Let's take a look. Scrolling through social media. This is a very natural phrase you can use when talking about technology or daily habits. For example, you could say, during dinner, everyone was scrolling through social media instead of talking to each other. This expression sounds modern and conversational, so it works especially well in IELTS topics related to family interactions, free time, or technology. Instinctively reached for my pocket. The word instinctively means automatically, without consciously thinking about it. Instead of using a basic sentence like, I checked my phone, you could say, I instinctively reached for my pocket when I heard a notification sound. This phrase helps your speaking sound more vivid and realistic because it describes natural human behaviour in detail. Device-free event. A device-free event is an event where phones or electronic devices are not allowed. For example, you might say, the concert was a device-free event, so nobody was allowed to use their phones. This phrase is excellent for IELTS speaking because it sounds modern, topic-specific, and more sophisticated than simply saying, phones weren't allowed. Fully present. If you are fully present, it means your attention is completely focused on the current moment instead of being distracted. For instance, you could say, without our phones, we were more fully present and focused on the conversation. This expression works really well when describing meaningful experiences or personal relationships because it sounds thoughtful and emotionally natural. Laughing non-stop means laughing continuously without stopping. For example, you could say, we were laughing non-stop during the movie. This is a simple but powerful expression that helps make your story sound more lively, energetic, and engaging in IELTS speaking. Meaningful quality time refers to spending valuable time with someone while giving them your full attention. For example, you might say, the trip gave us a chance to spend meaningful quality time together. This expression is extremely useful because it can be applied to so many IELTS topics, especially family, friendships, holidays, and relationships. That's it for today's lesson. If you ever get stuck and can't think of an idea for this topic, you can always use stories similar to Finn's or Blondie's and adapt them to fit your own experiences. The important thing is to make your story sound personal, believable, and easy to explain. Also, try practicing some of the vocabulary from today's lesson so you can use it naturally in your own speaking test. If you'd like more practice like this, you can become a member for extra lessons. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.